the Check Shoot podcast. Very excited today because I have my first author on the show. Technically, Rudy Sarzo, who worked with Ozzy Osbourne, Quiet Riot, all those guys. He wrote a book about his time with Ozzy Osbourne. So I guess technically she's the second author that I've had on my show. But Crystal Waltman, she wrote a book. It's called Quitting to Win. It was just released. And when I found her and I saw the book title, I thought, maybe it was about quitting your job to win, because I did that and I was like, oh, what a great idea. Quitting your job to win at life. That's what I want to do. But then I realized, no, it's actually about quitting drugs and alcohol, which may also be a good thing. It's definitely a more powerful life change that you can make. So she talks about this in the book. And as you probably know, if you listen to my show, a lot of my guests have struggled with this issue, from comedian Craig Gass, singer Donnie V. I think Brian Forsyth from Kix had some issues with drugs too that he had to cut out. Sarah Jean from iHeartRadio talked about this on our interview. They all had great stories to tell. And of course, Crystal's story is great as well. It's no different. And she talks even more about this stuff in the book. The book involves drugs, alcohol, gangs, major league ball players, steroids, suicide, homicide. I mean, there's all this crazy stuff in the book, and she's able to rise above all this and come out on top despite all this crazy stuff. Now she's written a book. She's teaching classes on yoga and diet and how to deal with back pain, which is another issue that she talks about in the book and on her interview. So check out her book, Quitting to Win. You can find it on Amazon, and I hope you enjoyed this interview. She was a great guest. Okay, well, welcome, Crystal Waltman. I said that right? That's
yes.
Not too hard to pronounce, right?
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, good to have you here in person. This is exciting. We got the COVID safety shield. I don't know if this does anything, but I'm just taking all the precautions. And we're socially distanced, right? So
yes, we are. It's nice to be in studio. I haven't been in for a while since COVID, so
yeah,
great setup here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I guess let's talk about. I'm just going to dive right into with the hard questions. Hard-hitting stuff. I read your book. It's a great book. It's out right now. Quitting to Win is the title.
Thank you.
And but let's start. I like to go chronologically a lot of times, so start back at the beginning. So this is, and then again, this is maybe a tough first question. But your parents divorced when you were 3. Now you probably don't remember that because you're 3 years old. But talk about having your parents divorced through your childhood, like how that affected you, because I think that people often underestimate the effect that has on kids. So I kind of want to get your take on that, because you're someone who actually went through it.
Sure. So growing up, my mom was the primary parent, and she was a great mom. And as we were little, and then, going to high school, I found softball as my family. Like I found team and, sport as my family. And I started playing at a very young age, and I just that's where I belonged. Those are the people I want to be with. I would do anything to be on a field. All I wanted to do was play. And it was, in the 90s in Arizona, it's when cocaine was coming over the border. And there was also fueled by gangs. So people in my neighborhood either went towards sports or towards gangs. So not everybody made it out. Some people went to jail. Very few of us from my high school went to college, much less scholarshiped. So early on, I found that, playing sports kept me out of trouble, kept me off the streets.
Did your mom raise you? Was your dad in your life at all? Did you see him or?
He was absent until I was about 18.
Oh.
And then he also came back again when my daughter was born.
Oh. So
we have a great relationship now. And it's like he's making up with my daughter for the time that he wasn't there with me.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you said, like you said, softball was a big thing. So you started that at age 10. Was there other sports that you tried, or what was it about softball that you liked so much?
Yeah, maybe just that I was tall and I could catch. They stuck me on first base from T-ball all the way up. And because I could catch, I was just there, and I was taller than my counterparts. And there was even times when we'd be playing and the other parents would stop the game and protest my age and say, prove that she is in the right age.
But you were.
I was,
okay.
yes.
Yeah,
but I was just taller and matured earlier than most girls.
Okay. Yeah, because I always was wondering about that when there's a kid that gets held back, but they're like 16 playing in like a 13-year-old's league or something.
Yeah, and the parents get pretty serious. I mean,
Do you have to like show your like library card or something because you don't have a driver's license at that point, right?
My mom used to carry around my birth certificate. Yeah,
Really?
But they would stop the game and say, "She's not allowed on this team," because I could hit it.
Yeah.
Over the fence or further at that time. Yeah.
So that was a big part of your life, and we'll get to more of that too. But also another big thing that became a part of your life was you started drinking. You started drinking at age 14. Do you remember that first experience?
Yeah. So just like, an athletic mentality of play hard, repetitive, I want to be the best, that also turned into a sport of drinking. So we would train hard, we'd play hard, and then after we won, then we would celebrate hard. So at 14, I was made the varsity team in high school. And so I was placed with the 18-year-olds right away, the 16, 17, 18-year-olds.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm 14 in high school. And, that came with a lot of social anxiety, even though I appeared to fit in from the outside because I was tall and I carried myself well, but I still had all this inner doubt and anxiety going on. So the freshman year, we won state, and I was part of that team and that group of older girls, and we would just celebrate, right? So then drinking became a sport, just like the sport of softball. And on the weekends, we'd celebrate together or after the games, and that was my first blackout.
What did you drink at this point in drinking?
Yeah, so I think it was like Mad Dog 2020. I don't know. There were like red solo cups floating around. It was like Biggie Smalls, Tupac, Snoop. I can hear, I can remember just hearing that in the background. There was pot, cigarettes.
So yeah, and you bought booze at you were underage and you bought it at a liquor store where in your book you talk about how the Bloods and the Crips hung out there at night. And so, but you said as long as you did it before 10 p.m. you were you were safe. But did you have a fake ID, or was the guy that sold you the booze, does he know you're underage? Like, how did you do this?
Yeah. So
not that I encourage this.
Yeah. I mean, times have changed so much, but there was like a border of two different high schools and where they met. And this was a convenience store, not a Circle K, but like a knockoff brand, Middle Eastern run. When you walk in there, you can smell the old cardboard and just kind of the dust on the packages of beer. And I would go in there at 16 and just place a very large order. I'd have cash. They'd smile at me. They'd give me extra little bottles and they say, see you next week. And so, no, I didn't even have a fake ID at that time. They were just willing to hand it out. And then, you glance down in the back and you see like a gun on the bottom shelf.
Jeez.
And yeah, bad stuff happened there at night. But so part of my side hustle at the very beginning was overcharging high school students for alcohol. They would give me money. I would go buy it and then, keep the margin or whatever. But I would walk into any store and never got turned down.
Wow.
Never got turned down.
Interesting. So you also talk about how you dated a football player who was in a gang and you picked him because you thought he could like protect you basically. And he did.
Yeah. Cause early on I had a sexual assault incident and I could never, from that point on, I just wanted somebody to protect me. And so I kind of just partnered with him, and he, having a reputation of, being around him was enough safety.
Was he a big guy then, I'm assuming?
Yeah, he was a big guy.
Okay.
Big
but
guy.
then he ended up going to jail, right?
Yeah. There was a night I had gotten out of the stolen car just moments before this incident took place on a Friday night. And there was an altercation and there were some gunshots, and yeah, a group of kids ended up going to jail. They were all on the football team from high school.
A group of kids. So not just, wow.
I think there was 4 guys in the car and they all went to jail. Somebody for pulling the trigger and the other ones for accessory. And
so you're already starting to see at a young age some of these behaviors that, dumb things that kids do when they're young, partying and gangs, all this stuff. Like, it seems glamorous at the time, but you're already starting to see, oh, maybe this isn't so glamorous. Going to jail doesn't sound too fun. And that's probably a long time in jail if you're stealing a car, I'm assuming.
And murder. Yeah.
Oh, there was a murder too.
Yeah.
That went right over my head. Yeah. So, and then there was another friend that you had that you partied with, Scarlett. Your friend Scarlett. You talk about this in the book, and you guys did alcohol, drugs. You played baseball together. You played mailbox baseball. Can you explain to our listeners what that is?
So mailbox baseball, we would get into the back of a pickup truck and we would drive around a neighborhood and with the baseball bat, hit the mailbox off of the mailbox.
Isn't this from Dazed and Confused? Is that where you guys got the idea?
I don't know.
Did you ever see that movie?
I don't think so.
They did the same thing in there, yeah.
And then so if you hit it, you knocked it loose, you get a point. If you knocked it all the way off, then you got a home run. And then whoever didn't get the most points, then they would have to be the lawn jockey. And we would drive down the neighborhood to somebody's front yard and pick up lawn ornaments.
Oh.
Put them in the truck, drive down another block and set them up in somebody else's yard.
Oh, wow. The
Just totally random.
Did you guys ever get caught for this or in trouble?
No, we never got caught.
Okay. So there was that. And then, but anyways, going back to your friend Scarlett. So then there was a tragedy there. Why don't you tell us about what happened with Scarlett?
Yeah. So Scarlett and I were together through high school and we trained hard for softball all the time. She had a batting cage in her backyard.
Wow.
And we would hit balls and we'd jump in the pool at night.
So her parents pretty wealthy then? Or?
No, just middle class,
Okay.
but very, her dad did very well for them for our neighborhood. And the mom was around. She was a stay-at-home mom. So she was always there taking care of everything. And the house was always in order. And I just loved her family. I mean, her mom and dad, her sister, they just had such a great family unit. And they were all in and always had the same family values of what was important in playing sports and training and going to college on scholarship. And so we went to 2 different colleges. I went to Central Arizona. She went to ASU. And we were brought back together over Christmas break. And so we were getting together. We hadn't seen each other for a while, first semester. And then we got back together at my mom's house in the backyard. And it was December in Arizona, like the cold, crisp night of, the stars you can see, you could smell the mesquite in the air. And we were just laughing, talking about boys, roommates, coaches, everything that had gone on with our team. And, I had brought some cocaine back from college and because it was running through, it was just dropped off there. And I had brought some home with me. We were doing that. We were drinking. And she left and we made plans for the next day to hang out and go for a drive. She went to her high school boyfriend's house and she told me she had to leave and go over there. And then I had went to bed and I got a call in the middle of the night, kind of staggered to the phone, like who's calling? This is before cell phones, maybe pagers back then, but not sure. I had a pager at one point.
Me too, yeah.
So
I thought I was cool. White suburban kid with a pager.
The phone rings and I stagger to the phone and it's her little sister and she just says, come over. And she dropped the phone. And so I put the phone down. I put my tennis shoes on. And she lived down the street, around the corner, through the park, pretty close, a couple blocks away. So I just start running. The sun's coming up. It's like the break of dawn, the cold air. And when I approach her house, the perfectly manicured lawn, it was surrounded by police cars. Her car was in the driveway. And we had just left each other a few hours ago. So I approached the scene and they said, there's been a homicide. They didn't know what had happened yet. And she was dead. And I kind of just went black from that point. And that really started my burying my feelings and just having this like internal rage all the time. So it was pretty sad. So I lost my best friend early on.
But it wasn't a homicide, right? So they thought initially it was a homicide because they're like, why would she kill herself? That's insane. She had a great life. She had it all.
Yeah, she was athletic phenom. I mean, she was just everything you could think of when you thought of an athlete. She trained hard. She set new records. She was team captain. She showed up all the time, on time, prepared. Everybody loved her. And by day, we were great athletes, and by night, like the baseball, mailbox baseball stuff, and we, we wreaked havoc at night, and we both had like this little low level of rage always bubbling up inside us. And it was like, if we were doing well in school and sports, then we shouldn't have anything to complain about, so we didn't really know how to deal with our emotions or that anything should be wrong. So her death ended up being ruled a suicide. And it just stopped me in my tracks for life. I didn't want to go back to school and play. I didn't want to play softball anymore. I just totally numb. I just went numb.
So, and then I think I had the timeline wrong on this, because before that, I guess this is when you guys graduated. You were actually you were poised to graduate and honored for your grades. You had the scholarship, but you got drunk to celebrate graduation. You showed up drunk, and they said you can't walk, so you weren't allowed to walk at graduation, right?
Yeah. So part of my high school legacy that I left behind, not only that of a female athlete scholarship, and there was only 2 of us that went that year. One went for volleyball, and I went for softball.
Yeah.
But it was rare that the girls went to college at all. And maybe they got pregnant or dropped out or just got married. So it was high school graduation, and 5 of us got together and rented a limo, this white stretched limo, like 80s style, picked us up, came to my house, and we stopped by the next friend's house, picked them up, and kind of took pictures all the way around at the family's gatherings. And we were drinking in the car on the way. So it was about an hour before we got to the venue. When I got to the venue, I was in like the green room, side room, putting on my cap and gown, and the athletic administrator, principal came over to me, and she was like, "I'm so proud of you. You're going to get called up 3 times today for your GPA, for your scholarship, and then graduating with the class." And as she's pinning on my hat with the bobby pin, she can smell me. And she's like, "Have you been drinking?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, we drank in the car on the way over." And she just took like a big step back, and she's like, "You can't walk."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No problem." And it didn't even faze me, because I was already in a different state of mind.
Yeah.
And when I drink, I turn into a different person. So off went the cap and gown, back to the limo with other friends who, weren't graduating, but just older friends that were there supporting us. And one of my friends walked down the aisle and turned to my parents and said, "Crystal can't walk." And they're like, "Well, what happened? Did she break her leg?" Like nobody knew really what happened until the end of the night and the graduation was over. And, they called my name 3 times at the ceremony, and it was just like crickets.
Weird.
Where's Crystal?
So was it before, around this time you were 18? I don't know if it was before you graduated or after Scarlett's death, but it was around this age that you started to experiment with pain pills as well, right? Can you tell me about that? Because I've heard so many horror stories. I never got into the pain pill thing. I mean, I took pain pills for, my wisdom teeth surgeries, things like that. But I never understood like why somebody would, they didn't have that effect on me. But I think with other people, it's like they take it. It's like the best thing in the world for them. So, and I don't know, all the horror stories I've heard about the addiction it can turn someone's life around. So tell me about your use with that, because you're someone that's actually used them. So you can speak from experience.
Yeah. So it wasn't because of the way that it made me feel. It was just a way to get you through to the next game. So it started around the age of 18 when I was in college playing ball. And, after a weekend tournament, my roommate and I, we'd come back and sit in the dorm room on our couch, and we would just sit in our inflammation. Our bodies were broken. We had a couple spinal stuff going on, but the team that I played for, the culture of it was do what's best for the team, not what's best for the player. So the culture of some sporting organizations is now shifting a little bit to develop the players instead of just produce a winning program. So we played, and no matter how hurt we were, we just kept playing, right? So we had our starting lineup. I started every game, and even though I was hurt and in pain, you know, I would drink the pain away after the games and hang out in the trainer's room. And that's where pills started for me, was college athletics.
So it was more to deal with the physical pain, but then did you get hooked on it? Like, is it more just like is it kind of a high or for emotional pain at all? Or
yeah, and then it was just another form of numbing. Okay. I mean, I had used alcohol for many years, all the way through high school to numb. Now I was introduced to pain pills to numb. And, you know,
it still wasn't your go-to drug of choice. Like,
I always had something running through my body, a little bit of something all the time. Wow. I always felt like I need to take the edge off.
Yeah. So also while you were in college, you got pulled over by Scottsdale PD, which I'm sure, you know, you're not the only one to have this story, because I've heard many people have these stories. But you guys were drunk, and I don't think you got a DUI. You got an underage consumption ticket, right? Which is different, but you still had to pay a fine and take alcohol classes, which now seems like, oh, that's not so bad. Because I feel like now I think they throw you in Tent City with the first offense, and they put the machine thing in your car where you got to blow, right?
Yeah, it's changed a lot since back then.
That's when you started taking these alcohol classes, you first kind of started to maybe wonder about, maybe I drink more than normal people, right?
Yeah. So I had court ordered go to these classes, and it was sitting in these classes that I'm like sitting there listening, going, oh, okay, I black out. Okay, this happens, that happens. You know, they have a list of these. They give you this pamphlet when you walk in with these 12 questions. And then this is like a test that you don't want to pass, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking and you're reading these.
I like that. No.
You're reading these questions. You're going, oh, yes to that. Yes to this one. Yes to this one. And then, you know, you sit there and listen to people talk, and you can relate. And, you know,
did you answer the questions honestly? Because I feel like a lot of people would just go, no, that's not, they just deny, or they try to fake it to make themselves look like they don't have a problem. Or did you answer the questions honestly?
Well, yeah, I answered them honestly. But it was like, has alcohol ever, you know, kept you from doing something in your life? Like for my graduation, for example,
well, you know,
like
yeah, you can't lie about that.
It had a thing, you know, and then I got in trouble this particular night when I got pulled over. I was 20. It was on my 20th birthday. And I was hanging out with donors of the university, which athletes did often, you know, because they were the ones that funded the athletes. And, you know, there was that whole under thing going on. And so I left them on Scottsdale Road. It was an old bar called Eli's. It was like right here around the corner, right where Sprinkles is now.
Anyways, is that the cupcake place? Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
There used to be this old bar there.
They tear it down?
They tore it all the way down, yeah. Wow. So I was leaving on Scottsdale Road and got pulled over. The lights went on, and yeah, I just got underage consumption. But it was sitting in those classes that I realized that my drinking was different than others. But in my head and in my mind, I had this, it never crossed my mind that I could be alcoholic, because to me, an alcoholic looked like this. Whatever that was, right? It was
the homeless guy with the paper bag and the covering the bottle of booze.
It was an unkept person that, you know, yes, the brown bag, you know, staggering down the street, or, you know, and they explained in there that everybody reaches their own bottom, and everybody's bottom is a little bit different. So going to classes could be somebody's bottom, or getting beat up, or beating up somebody, or going to jail, or losing your house, or losing your family, or losing your rights to drive your kids. So they planted the seed for me, and then it clicked like, okay, well, my dad was alcoholic, and that's why he wasn't around.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So maybe I have that in me, and they talked about how it's part of your DNA, you know, whether you can turn it on or off. So I could turn it off if I don't drink, right?
Yeah.
But when I drink, it turns on right away. But I was a real blackout drinker, and I had a lot of blank spaces in my life.
Yeah. And so this is interesting too. So after the graduation, after you got the DUI, it's interesting that the way your parents treated you, they didn't like yell at you or ream you for getting in trouble, or, you know, they didn't get angry. They just gave you the silent treatment. They just kind of backed off, right?
Yeah. So my mom remarried when I was 10 to a great guy, and I had a wonderful role model as a stepdad. And he was the one that drove me to practices, and we spent a lot of time together on the field and whatnot. But my mom's emotional intelligence of coping and dealing with feelings was just kind of like, if we don't talk about it, it's not happening. So as I turned from a young girl into a teenager and was crossed with all these social, these new social things. And like I said, it happened quick for me because at 14, I was running with the 18-year-olds right away. So there wasn't like an ease into it in high school. Like some people go from freshman, then they take on this to driving, to drinking, to smoking. Like, boom, I just went all in right away. And my mom didn't really, I don't know that she had the tools. She grew up in a really small town outside of Phoenix called Wilcox.
Oh.
And so it's like,
I feel like I've heard of that.
Past Tucson. They're known for their apples.
Yeah. Don't they have wineries there too or something?
It's the new wine place. Yeah. But my family settled in Wilcox a few generations ago because one of my great-great-grandma had asthma.
Oh.
So back then, people moved west.
Okay.
Whenever they had asthma problems. So they moved from Michigan to Arizona, settled in Wilcox, and my mom made it up to Phoenix and started raising us on life up here. Yeah. But she didn't have the emotional tools, I think, because maybe she grew up in a small town and didn't really know what was happening and what was going on, or we just didn't talk like other mom and daughters talked.
Yeah.
As long as I was performing, getting good grades, and playing on the field, we didn't really talk about anything else.
And yeah, you were doing good. You had good grades. You were doing good. You guys won the national championship at your freshman year of at college for softball. So Central Arizona.
Correct.
You said. But then you transferred to ASU. Now this is where things start to get even more interesting. I mean, there's so much stuff in this book. This book is great. I loved it, by the way. But so you're working at a bar and you started dating a Major League Baseball player. That's pretty exciting. He was in town for spring training. You said that he made you feel safe, like, kind of like that other guy but it was also kind of a seasonal relationship. You knew that he had other girls, but you thought you would outlast them, right? Which is a mistake I think a lot of young women make. And you felt like it was meant to be. And, that you were going to beat out all these other girls. So what would you tell young girls listening right now who might be in a similar relationship, like where they know they aren't the only one, but they think they can outlast the other person, or that it's meant to be, or...
Yeah, that's a tough one, Chuck. I mean, it's funny that this has kept coming up, but I've never known any men to be monogamous. So the fact that somebody can be open with it, or that I think is easier on the psyche than women who think they're the only one, and then once they find out, they go fucking crazy. That shit crazy.
Wow. So yeah, because that's interesting. So. And you don't say who this baseball player was, but you do say that he had a mansion, right?
Oh, well, they rented mansions here in town while they were in town for spring training.
Okay. Yeah, because it said in the book, you're like, you saw needles laying all over the mansion. So I'm assuming he was using steroids, unless he's a diabetic. But you said they would like outlaw one drug and then the doctor would develop some sort of new steroid or something. And but you said it wasn't just steroids; it was also booze, cocaine, and tons of other drugs. Yeah. Right? And this is all you're at like 19, 20, right?
Yeah, I was in college, freshman, sophomore year. Yeah,
and
19, 20, 21.
And then at age 20, you found out you were pregnant, which went on to be a stillborn. But then this ball player was, not part of your life anymore, but he went on to, you don't say his name, but you do say that he went on to break records for an East Coast team and testify about steroid use. So I have my guesses, but we don't say his name. So that's a really interesting part of the book, I thought. And then, I think it was around this time you ended up going to Vegas. I can't remember the reasoning why, but this is where you met I think this is your now husband, right? Michael?
My now husband, yeah.
Yeah, at the Venetian. But he was also from Arizona. Just happened that the two of you happened to be in there coincidentally in Vegas?
Yeah. So the week that I graduated college was December. So I graduated early, and in between, and some of my teammates and their parents were going to go to Vegas just to be on holiday break. And I was there, and I was like, I told my mom, I'm going to go Vegas, LA, New York. I've just graduated. I'm ready to get out of here. And she goes, okay, honey, you go. We'll be here. We figured it out before others. You'll be back. She's like, you go. So I was interviewing in Vegas for a hotel job. And my husband's client was a Venetian. And I was in a meeting and they were like, oh, you guys should meet. You're both from Arizona. You're both single. And so I met him the week that I graduated college. And he's been the rest of my life up until this point, over 20 years later.
Yeah. So fast forward, you two are married. You're trying to have a baby. And then this is kind of when you decided you're going to try to learn hot yoga so that you can be healthy and you're not going to drink. And you do this 9-week course in Acapulco, Mexico, where no drinking is allowed. It's very rigorous. But then after a few weeks, I mean, this is an amazing thing about people who are like really hell bent on drinking. You found drinking buddies, and eventually, that didn't work, basically, right?
Yeah. So I went away to Bikram Yoga College of India, and I don't know if you saw the E60 on Bikram.
No.
But that just recently came out in a whole Netflix special. But so I get to this yoga college, and it was in Acapulco, Mexico.
So, I mean, that does sound like it's maybe not the best place for a place to not drink. Like that sounds like a party town, is it not? Or,
I mean, we were at the Fairmont Princess and I lived there for 9 weeks and it was just magical. But so I go there, I couldn't get pregnant. I wasn't getting pregnant. It wasn't happening naturally. And I just thought, oh, I'm too toxic. I just need to go clean out my body. And I had taken up yoga because of my back pain. And that was a way to, kind of Band-Aid the pain day by day, but I'd have to go like 3 times a week. And it didn't cure my back pain, but I was able to, maintain life. So that's how I fell in love with yoga. And then I went to go clean out my body. So I get to yoga college in Acapulco, 300 people, 7 different languages. We're all wearing, barely nothing yoga clothes because we're in this room of 104 degrees and 60% humidity. Our mats are like 6 inches apart and we're sweating on each other. Exactly what you would picture yoga college to be. So there's some corruption in the administration. And as soon as I start to see that, just like I saw in my college, just like I saw in other organizations that I was part of, was, oh, they're doing their thing. They can't call me out on my drinking.
Okay.
So I got there, I saw what was happening and I'm like, oh, they're not going to bother me. So I just walked down the beach to the next hotel and drink there on a Saturday afternoon or whatever. And, and found my people and kept on drinking. So I did go to yoga. I mean, that was a great experience.
But it didn't work for the purpose was to try, part of it at least was to try to quit drinking. So that didn't work. You also tried like a spa in Palm Springs. Is there other things that you tried to do to quit drinking?
Oh, Chuck, I've tried everything. I mean, you tried from, switch from hard alcohol to wine, only drink on weekends, don't start before, 4 o'clock.
You make up these rules like, you're like, oh, I'm only going to do 3. And then after 3, you're like, well, what's one more? And then,
So I pretty much, the insanity in my head and the noise behind alcohol, it was never stopping. I was always like, when am I going to get my next drink? When can I let me take care of business of life so then I can sit and relax and, escape my mind.
Yeah.
So my life was very well put together because I just had that high achieving, like, if I do this and all this looks good, then I can go do this and nobody's going to care. So where were we at yoga college?
Yeah.
Or when I came back.
So no, again, you're still trying to drink.
Yeah.
But then eventually, I think you did quit drinking because then you had your daughter and you kind of gave it up for a while. Right. And then, probably because of your daughter, I'm assuming. I mean, if you get pregnant, you didn't drink when you were pregnant or didn't drink a lot. I don't think so. But then eventually you're driving. And then I think for whatever reason you decide, I think you talk about this in the book about something, maybe you were at a ball game or something. You thought, oh, let's have a couple of beers. So then you kind of fell off the wagon and then you started drinking and you were drinking with your daughter in the car. And that's kind of where you said, this is not good. This is a bad thing.
Yeah. So when I got pregnant, I was able to stop drinking just because I was so happy that I was pregnant. Couldn't believe I was pregnant now for the second time.
Yeah.
Right. First time
Right,
around.
that's true, yeah.
First time around, I had a stillborn. So now I get pregnant again, and I'm just like hyper, like, okay, I got to do everything right. Because I'll blame myself on the stillborn because
You think it was the drugs?
he was on lots of drugs too, and so was I. So I just don't think it made a good,
It might have been for the best that your body rejected it naturally.
right. And then so when I got pregnant, I was able to stop drinking. Then I had my daughter, was able to continue to stop drinking because I breastfed for over a year and a half, 2 years. And then when I decided to stop breastfeeding, it was March, and back to spring training games and hanging out with my friends, and picked up like 10 years ago. And my drinking was never the same post-pregnancy. I never metabolized alcohol the same. Now it was even worse.
Oh, like you got drunk quicker?
Yes.
Oh.
It
Well,
was
you might have
'cause
lost some of your tolerance too if you had quit for so long.
Right. I'd taken 2 years off
Yeah.
to have a baby. And then now, and being a drunk mom is not a good look. Drinking and driving with kids in the car is not a good look. I mean, if your kid gets hurt and you're in charge, even if you're at home, it's still child neglect and endangerment because you're the adult on the scene and you're not present.
Yeah.
So this madness went on for a couple of years. My daughter was she wasn't in anything yet. Like there was no preschool or kindergarten yet. We
Okay.
were just at home. So,
Sure.
it was nothing for me to push the jogging stroller down the street and say hi to the neighbors and be drinking vodka lemonade out of my tumbler in my activewear.
This seems like this is a very common thing for a lot. I've heard this from a lot of different. I mean, obviously, I'm not a mom, but I've heard this from a lot of people that a lot of moms drink because it's just stressful or it's boring or I don't. Tell me about it. I don't know. I don't understand this. It's like fascinating to me though.
Yeah, it was so socially acceptable of like, let's take the edge off. Oh, we've been moms all day. It's 3:00. We need to sit by the pool and.
So you're drinking with other moms, not just by yourself, or
yes,
both?
both.
Or both. Okay.
Both.
Huh.
Yeah, it was very socially acceptable. And alcohol just slowly crept up on me and made my life unmanageable. And to where it started getting into my head, like, okay, I'm going to stop. Every Monday I would say like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. Or my husband would tell me something that I did or something that I said in a social event and I wouldn't remember it because I was in a blackout because after a certain amount of drinks, I would still function.
Yeah.
But I would not remember it.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw that movie, Girl on the Train. Emily Blunt.
No, I don't think so. Now I have to see that.
So
I like her.
she was in an alcoholic state, and her husband murdered somebody, and she witnessed it, but he told her she didn't see it, and she didn't know. And so she was trying to recall what had happened because she thought she was in the scene of this.
Yeah.
And when I watched that movie, it really struck me like lightning because people were telling me what was happening, and you just have to kind of take them as like, oh, did that really happen? I don't know if that happened. Was I part of that? Like, if you're part of something and you're in a blackout, does it count? Are you guilty?
Yeah.
That state of consciousness. Scary. And so I was just like, I can't keep doing this. So every Monday I'd be like, I got to stop. And then Monday I'd stay in bed and be like self-loathing and, just so sad. And then Tuesday I'd start to feel better and I'd open up the blinds. Meanwhile, my husband's going to work every day, just like normal. No problem. He'd be like, are you okay? Do you need anything? I had help with my daughter, so I could just stay in bed and be sad for myself. And then Wednesday would come around. I'd take a shower. Thursday, I'd get ready and put my makeup on, and I was in that vicious cycle again. And I just thought I was more fun as a mom drinking because I would get on the floor, play with the kids, go to the park. And I just like to go to the park and, what used to be like sitting out in the sun with your girlfriends at a hotel pool now was taking your kids to the park, drinking out of your tumbler. And I saw a few of my friends go to jail. I saw them lose their driver's license for a year. not
For DUI?
Yeah, for DUI. And now the laws are getting stricter and stricter, and people are starting to go to jail. I mean, thank God I didn't kill anybody, drinking and driving. And like when it gets that, when you see somebody who's lost somebody because of a drunk driver, the whole mad moms against drunk driving and DARE and whatnot, it's like, I didn't want to be part of that, but I couldn't stop. I didn't know how to stop.
Yeah. So this is great. And I love this is good advice for anybody who wants to do anything. So this is how you did it. How you quit drinking is you looked to somebody else who did what you wanted to do. And you reached out to your neighbor and you just flat out asked her, like, how'd you quit drinking? Right? It was just like very blunt, right? Kind of out of the blue almost.
Yeah. I mean, just like being an athlete, if somebody's hitting something or running a certain way, you say, how did you make that time? How are you doing that? What equipment are you using? How are you training? What practices are you doing? Who's your strength coach? Who's your speed coach? So I knew everybody on my street, and because I'd push a stroller around all the time. And then I had one neighbor that did not drink. And she was this very stoic older lady, very well put together. She looked like she walked off the cover of like a Chico's magazine, always with like kind of matching tops and bottoms.
Is Chico some sort of women's style? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming from context.
It's a women's store. She was single, and I knew she had been divorced like 3 times, but she had this house, great car, and she was all well put together.
Okay.
And so I just asked her, how'd you stop drinking? And she said like, oh, I drank enough for many years and I've ruined enough lives and I went through enough marriages and money and kids. And she just like said, I will come with me on Sunday. And I was like, okay. So show up at my house Sunday at 5. So I showed
Didn't tell you where you were going or what you're doing. Okay.
She goes, I'll tell you all about it.
What'd you think? You think, oh, we're going to AA, or would you?
No, I did not think.
Okay.
I didn't know. I hadn't even really heard that term again.
Oh.
I just thought we were going to go to dinner.
Oh.
Just to friends going out to dinner and have dinner. And I was going to ask
you
her.
then, huh?
She kind of tricked me.
Because I would be scared to go to an AA meeting.
Yeah, I did not willingly know I was going. So I show up at her house. We drive towards Paradise Valley, which is this great part of town where the great mountains in Arizona.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
And we're driving down the palm trees, and I'm like, oh, there's some of my favorite restaurants down here. We're going to go out and have a great time, watch the sunset. And then she pulls into this church.
So she still hasn't told you at this point in the car. You're still thinking it's some sort of maybe resort you're going to.
Yes. She's like, oh, let's go meet some of my friends.
Oh. So
we pull into this church, like the opposite side of the road from the restaurant.
And how did you feel about church at this point? Were you a church goer, or were you anti-church, or?
I had tried church to get sober, and it just didn't work.
Okay.
I showed up every Sunday. I got dressed. I took my daughter to Sunday school, and it just wasn't enough because I didn't have that connection of knowing the others that were going through the same thing that I was, because I didn't speak Bible.
Yeah.
So we pull into this church. We go around the church to the back where the small meeting rooms are, and she parks, and we get out, and there's all these people, and like 100 people are congregating into this meeting space. And it was a nice place, carpet, air conditioning, lots of smiles and laughter. People were happy. They were hugging her. They were hugging me. I'm like, what's going on? They're handing me raffle tickets when you walk in. And oh, we're so happy you're here. And I'm like, okay. So I look at the literature on the table, and I'm like, oh my God, we're at one of these alcohol classes.
Go back for a second though. Cause explain, I still don't understand the raffle ticket. How does it, is that like it's your turn to go up and speak or something? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this was what they call a speaker meeting. So somebody speaks for anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. And because there was over the amount of people there is, and it's an hour meeting, you get a raffle ticket. If they call your number, then you can speak if you want.
Yeah.
But some meetings are smaller where everybody gets to speak, and where you break off into small groups.
Yeah.
But this was a raffle style. If they call your number, you get to speak. There was no baskets going home or gift cards or anything like that. It wasn't a silent auction.
That's what you thought at first? Like,
I had no idea. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't know either. Yeah, I didn't. That's interesting. Yeah, I was wondering that. I heard you talking about another interview. I was like, raffle tickets. I'm like, what? I don't know. No, that just came to me like the speak. Okay, so does make sense. So you did that, and it's probably an awkward experience the first time, but you just kept going, right?
It was so awkward. And I was like, how are they so happy and sober? Oh, what do you mean? This whole room full of people, they're not drinking? Why are they laughing? And I couldn't make the connection of being sober and happy, because to me, alcohol, not drinking, meant my life was over and the fun had ended.
Huh.
So seeing these people have what I want of emotional sobriety and being happy, it was just amazing. It was a different kind of happiness.
Yeah. So that inspired you to keep going. And
yeah. So on the way home, so I sat there and there was the speaker of the night, and he was just so captivating. He was also an athlete.
Oh yeah.
And
I know what this is.
I listened to his story, and he speaks all the time. It was his anniversary, and that's why
he's
was
a famous athlete.
Yes. And so I listened to him, totally captivated by his voice, his appearance, his just overall presence.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if he can do it, I can do it.
There you go.
And just like that, when after it was over, I ordered his book and I quick read his book, and I'm like, wait, what? He was just honest with everything. He put it all out there. And I was just blown away by the fact that he was able to share his story, and he was not ashamed of it. Right. And then that he had turned his pain into his purpose. And, I was always thinking that you have to look like this on the outside, and you can't tell anybody about these feelings that you're having because, nobody wants to hear that. So on the way home, she said to me, I said, okay, what's next? And she said, okay, you need to get a sponsor, and you need to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I was like, well, I don't know if I have time for that. My daughter, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, listen, your life depends on it. If you are at your bottom and you're telling me what you're telling me is true, you're drinking and driving and you're, just carrying on. She goes, your life depends on it. And also my husband had said, we may need to get a divorce if you can't stop drinking, because you're putting our children at danger.
Wow.
So that was my bottom. And so I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. It was the hardest thing I did. The next day I went to this meeting close to my house in an undesirable shopping complex. And I walk in, I pull up in my car and I can't get out of the car. I'm frozen. And
you're by yourself this time.
I'm by myself.
Your neighbor. Okay.
Yeah. And she was like, get on your smartphone of yours and look up a meeting, and you go every day, and then you call me after you're finished. And I said, okay. So I go to this shopping center with this meeting place, and I had been through the shopping center before, didn't really know what it was, but there was always people outside smoking. Undesirable, baggy pants, t-shirts, unkept, smelly. They just looked like they smelled, even though I hadn't really walked by them yet.
Okay.
So I pull up in my car, and I am paralyzed. I can't get out. I call her, and she says, get out of the car. Just get out. You're already there. You already have your daughter taken care of. Like, your time is now. Get out.
Yeah.
So I get out of the car, and I walk through this group of men smoking cigarettes, and they're smiling, and they're saying, welcome. And I get to the door, and somebody greets me, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And you walk in, and there's like box fans and popcorn, low ceilings, and then the linoleum's peeling up. Totally different setting than the one I was at the day before. But these faces are so familiar to me. I don't know any of these people, but it's faces of those people that I grew up with. And I'm like, wow, these are my people. And I sit down and I start to listen to them share. And this was more sharing meeting. So sharing started, and I started hearing my story from this person and this person and this person. And I called my sponsor afterwards and I was like, oh, that was the scariest thing I ever did. And I sat there in silence, frozen the whole time, like just so uncomfortable out of my skin.
But
and
you stuck with it. You stayed there. Yeah.
I stuck with it. And I ended up going to that place regularly and just like knowing everybody that's standing at the door, walking through the smoke pile, and I would go.
Stepping out of your comfort zone, though, that's a big piece of it.
I would go to any meeting, anywhere. And when I continued to travel, I would just love to go to meetings on the road and see people. But so 90 meetings, 90 days.
Yeah.
It took me about 30 days before I could speak.
Oh, okay.
And I cried almost every meeting. I'd hear something, I'd start crying. And I couldn't really function in regular life. Like I had to dial back everything socially. I wasn't prepared to see any of my friends. I wasn't prepared for them to say, let's go to dinner and have them order a drink or order me a drink or, kick. So I was so paralyzed.
Were you ever tempted to drink again after this?
Yeah. So after I went a year and I got my year chip. So they give you these chips as milestones.
Okay.
So I went a year and I had a great lunch out with a few of my sober girlfriends and my sponsor. And then life got great and I went back to work, personal training, hanging out in the gym, just doing everything. And I was happy. I was feeling good, not bloated, waking up every day, showing up, and just had this great group of friends. And then I'm like, well, I think I've healed myself. It's been a long time. March starting to roll around again. I'm starting to get like that itchiness of like Barrett Jackson, the golf tournament,
spring training,
yeah, it's that big, from January all the way through April of events going on in town. And that was just such a big part of my life that I started to get antsy. And they call it the RIDS, restless, irritable, and discontent. Like I started just getting like antsy, and I'm like, oh, maybe I could drink again. Maybe it would be okay if I had one. Look how long I went. I've gone to all these meetings. I've been committed for a whole year. I read the book. So I thought about this for a couple weeks before I took a drink again. And then that day, it was okay. I had 2 drinks. Then the next day, it was okay. I had 3 drinks. Then the next day, 4 drinks. And then I couldn't put a cork in the bottle. Then I was finishing off a bottle again. And they say you end up exactly as desperate as you were from the time you stopped. It took me less than a week to fall down on my knees again and surrender.
So then did you do it all over again? Then you just started
all over again. Okay. 90 meetings in 90 days. All over. Wow.
So what advice would you have for people who are worried about their drinking or drugs and want to quit? Or it's kind of a 2-part question, I guess. For people who are worried about their own, or what if you're worried about somebody else's drinking or drugs? Like what advice would you give them?
Yeah. So it's kind of like just, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Like, because you're only caught up in between the prison and between your ears. So you're the only one holding yourself back from anything. Like, life is great. Go out there and get it. So if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, it's maybe something you want to look into. There is help out there. You know, find the support. Take yourself through that little quick quiz.
That's right. Yeah, you have that in your book.
I have that in the book. And
I took the quiz.
My book is filled with resources for mental illness, and drug abuse.
Yeah, because there's Alcoholics Anonymous, there's Narcotics Anonymous, there's Gamblers Anonymous, sex addicts. Do you think people can be addicted to anything? I mean, and is sometimes maybe that a positive thing? Like, what if you're addicted to working out or your business or helping people? I mean, where do you draw the line? Like, and also, like, I think like sometimes a kid who lays around and plays video games all day, is he really addicted to video games, or is he just lazy, or is he depressed? Like, I don't know. What's your thought on all this addiction? Because that word gets thrown out so much now.
Yeah, my thought is that it's often that athletes have that addictive personality because they train harder than the next person, and they push themselves to a pain level to where they're able to grow their muscles and body, and they have to always operate on that threshold.
Yeah.
Of if one is good, 2 is better. So they have that. It's the disease of more. So the disease of more can produce a high quality life. If you're an athlete, right? You can be a great performer, or you can be a great producer at work. You know, somebody who's always working, but there's always an imbalance. So I was really surprised that when I started going to meetings and then I'd go to my health club and I would see the same people.
Interesting.
And I started seeing the same people and going, oh my gosh, this is more common than you think. And like, so that athletic behavior is the same behavior.
It's almost like there's a gene, and if people who have that gene, if they drink, they're gonna, when they do something, they do it like to 100%. So if they take drinking, they're gonna. It's like you said, like you guys treated drinking like it was a sport, and you got better at it, and you conquered it. And so I feel like if they use that gene to focus on something else, people can do amazing things.
They can do amazing things, and you can turn your life around if you want to. And it's not, this program is not for people that need it. It's for people that want it. There's plenty of people that need it. But it doesn't always work when your family sends you there.
Right.
You have to want it for yourself, and you have to want a better life. And you have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well,
let's talk about some of the, now we've kind of told your story. Let's talk about maybe some of the concepts that you have in this book. So you kind of touched on this one already a little bit, but social anxiety. You said that when you first quit drinking, it was hard to socialize with people. I know for some people, big groups of people and large parties can be overwhelming. For me personally, I think that's one thing that might be a positive about the lockdown for like introverts. I didn't realize, I was like, I actually found myself really enjoying being at home. I know I shouldn't say, I was like, oh, this is actually really, I don't have to go to this party with all these people I don't like. Oh, I don't have to go to this crowded, loud bar with all these like annoying people and I can't hear anything. I'm like, oh, I can just sit at home and like relax. I was like, this is kind of nice. But eventually we do have to socialize with other people. So how do you do that without alcohol? Because I think that's a crutch for a lot of people. Like there'll be many, many times where I'm just, for whatever reason, I decide, you know what, I'm not drinking tonight, or I'm going some time without drinking. And people look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, what? You don't want to you're not going to have a drink? You're really? But well, I don't, they just think it's like the most insane thing ever. Like how do you do it as somebody who's been sober for as long as you have, that you must go to parties and events, right?
Yeah, I'm back. I can go anywhere. There's no situation that I shy away from, because if it's a dark situation, then I feel like my light will shine. But I have a couple tricks and tips that I use. Like when I go out socially, if you walk in and somebody offers you a drink, you're like, oh, let me go say hi to the hostess.
Oh yeah.
Or you're like, oh, let me, I have to go use the restroom, or, oh, I see somebody I need to say hi to.
So you avoid that initial, like, let me get you a drink by distracting.
Right. Because of course that's what they're doing as a hostess. And that, that's when there were somebody's handing out drinks, and people who drink are more comfortable when people around them are drinking. So that's why, like when you tell people you're not drinking, they get uncomfortable and they're like, what do you mean you're not drinking? What do you mean you're not drinking?
Like, well, I'm like, I don't care if you drink. I mean, go ahead, go nuts, go do whatever you want. But I just don't feel like it.
Yeah. And it took me a while before I was able to I didn't want the pushback. So I would more avoid it. In like my first year, I would just be like, oh, I'm good. I didn't have a hard line of, I don't drink like I did now. Like the book came out and now it's kind of like a way of outing myself. And like, no matter what, I just don't drink. So it doesn't matter. You do whatever you want. And I'm happy for people that can drink.
Do people ever make you feel like less than for not, oh, she doesn't drink, and like, do they, like, it's a demeaning thing, like, oh, she's an alcoholic, or like, don't get her a drink, like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, there was like early on, there was this issue like, oh, well, we didn't want to invite you to that concert because you have that thing.
That thing.
Like that thing. That thing
That's
called
a nice way to
commitment
call it,
to sobriety. So it would make them uncomfortable if I wasn't, if not everybody around them was on the same state that they were. But you know what? God has a funny way of doing things for you that you can't do for yourself. So people that fell away in my life just fell away.
Okay.
But
why do you think alcohol is so prevalent in our society, like among adults and for many teenagers?
Yeah.
Because like I said, I just get so many like shocked reactions if I just don't feel like drinking that night, or for whatever reason, it's personal choice. I don't feel like, I don't want to have, like, why is that? Like, just, it's always like the default is, you're going to have a few drinks wherever we go. If it's a concert, it's a ball game, it's a party,
I really think that the culture is changing. Even like Bud Light came out with a non-alcoholic thing just this couple of weeks ago. Yeah. I saw them. But I think it's really shifting because the knowledge and there's more information out there. Mm-hmm. You know how long it took for me to get that information? If some younger girls read this book or some athletes, they might be able to get themselves out of it earlier. And not have to go through all the pain or find their bottom, like, oh, it's okay not to drink. Like, I didn't know any different because I started at such a young age, and that's just what you did. And that's just, the culture was that. And like you're saying, and even in the mom culture and.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. I feel like it's actually like going the pendulum has swung the other way. Cause I feel like in the 70s, my dad told me, I don't know if you watch the show Mad Men, but my dad, he loves that show. Like my parents like that show because they said, in the 60s and 70s, that's how it was. Like you'd go to the office and you'd have a drink and that was just normal. And then at some point, that changed where it was like, oh, you can't drink at the office. I don't know, maybe depending on the job, but maybe if you're a rock star or something. But, most like businesses, accounting, I think, I don't know. I feel like even maybe in the schools, I feel like in the 50s and 60s, the teachers and stuff would drink. That would just be unheard of in today's society. But now it's like going back where people are, I see all the time on like Facebook and stuff, people post pictures like, I'm having my beer at work or whatever. Like a lot of these companies are starting to stock fridges of booze, kind of a way to like lure people into, look, our company is fun. We have alcohol and stuff.
Yeah. And like, 2 movies, like The Bad News Bears, the coach was like a retired, baseball player and he was a drunk and they were like, you got to coach this team as your community service.
Oh,
and
that's right. I haven't seen that
and
in a
he
while.
was like drinking on the field and like now, that will get you fired.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like kind of changed, but yeah, so that's interesting. So, I guess, it kind of goes pendulum, maybe just keeps swinging back and forth. I don't know. But, how do you feel about, this is kind of a concept in the book, risk, because I feel like you took a lot of risks in your life, starting out being young and started trying alcohol and then buying alcohol underage, with the Bloods and the Crips around, drinking and driving is a big risk. You're doing those things. You were doing those things to take risks, I think, and the drugs, all that stuff. But I feel like you're taking big risks now by talking about this stuff, by telling personal things, writing a book about it, coming on interviews, coming to some stranger's house. So like, what is your thought on risk taking now? Do you think that people can take positive risks? Risk is a big part of like succeeding in life, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that pressure makes diamonds. And, it's when you're uncomfortable is when you grow. Mm-hmm. So when the times are dark and, that's when things are starting to grow and move. And yeah, it is a big risk. Not everybody in my camp was so on board about saying everything in my book. And it's a risk that I had to take. Like I wanted to out myself and I didn't know how my mom was going to react. And she's still true to her form. When the book came out, she didn't talk to me for a week when she first got it. And then we just picked up like nothing and she never mentioned the book.
Interesting.
And I heard when I started talking to people about writing books, they would say that like my parents still haven't talked to me. It's been 20 years because they feel like I shamed the family or they feel like that so I was taking that risk, but I knew it was something that I had to do for myself and tell my side of the story. It's my perspective, and my brother's like, well, you left a lot out. I didn't know a lot of that happened, whatever. And he's like, well, what are you going to write about? He goes, my friends want to know what you're going to write about. I go, well, it really doesn't matter because they don't know how to read anyways. So it's like, ouch. They're never going to read it, right? Yeah, okay. So I wrote the book and my publisher said, write it like nobody's going to read it. Don't hack yourself.
Okay.
So I wrote it like nobody was going to read it.
And you wrote it, it was written for a younger version of yourself, right? Is that what you said? Like you wrote this, like you'd want to give this to like a 14-year-old Crystal, right?
Yeah. Like I was coaching 3 different levels of softball teams at the time, my 8 and 9-year-old daughter's team and a junior high team and a girls getting ready for high school. And during the writing process, and I would see these girls on the field and I would see what they were going through. And I was just having all this, it really helped me write because it was just all these lessons that I'd want to share with them.
Yeah. Well, another thing you talk about in the book, happiness is a choice. So I think it was your daughter's dance teacher. She always seemed happy, and she said it was because she chose to be. But I mean, isn't that kind of easier said than done? Like, how do you ignore all the negative thoughts and feelings that creep up? I mean, even if you're like, oh, I'm going to be happy. And then, you turn on the news or something, let's say, for example, and it's not so happy out there. So how do you stick with that choice? Because I'd love to choose to be happy if it was that easy.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss, right? If I don't turn the TV on, I can stay happy. And I mean, even during this time, this pandemic, it's really like people's characters are coming out, right? You really see who somebody is. Like, and I'm choosing during this time to live in faith, not fear. And it's God's time, not my time. And, if you can't see your family and you can't see your friends, then what's the point of living? So, and God's going to do what he's going to do. We got to be socially responsible, but it's not worth my mental health to not see people and connect. So early on in the meetings, when the pandemic or the COVID came out, they kind of take like a group conscience meeting, and the overall consensus was like, we have a deadly disease. And if we don't have each other, we're no good to our families anyway. So staying home because of COVID will kill us.
Yeah, because a lot of those people will start drinking. Right?
That's right.
I think a lot of people are drinking more because of it, even if they didn't have a problem, they might have one now, right? Yeah.
And that has happened a lot with.
That's why I decided when this thing happened, I was like, I'm done. I quit drinking. I stopped drinking from day one. I was like, I'm going to try to be as healthy as I can. So if I quit drinking, I try to eat healthy. I could do better on that. But, it's like, I feel like that's an interesting perspective, though, for people who are full on
because we have
alcoholics.
We have a mental illness. And and what the recipe for my mental illness is sleep, connection, pray. I have to connect. I need my sober friends around me. I need somebody that's walking in the room on the verge of tears to remind me where I was and how I never want to go back there. And then I need somebody in front of me who has the joy, happy, joyous, and free life that I want, and seeing how did you stay married and do that when people around you aren't sober? Like, how do you choose sobriety?
Do people have the choice though with those meetings? Like, could they do it online or Zoom or something?
So they did.
Because if you have asthma, if you're elderly, I would say probably.
Yeah. So it did switch over to Zoom. Okay. And then people are still meeting underground, if you will.
Oh, really?
If they needed.
It's like a what do you call those things? The bars that were outlawed in the
speakeasy.
Speakeasy. Thank you.
I mean, all COVID did was push things underground. It's not that they stopped.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
I mean, people still needed
connection,
hot yoga, saunas. It just pushed everything underground.
Another thing, this is a totally 180 here that we're talking about now, but it was in my notes because another thing I wanted to ask you about was suicide, because obviously your friend Scarlett, suicide, but were you yourself suicidal as well after your friend's death and your miscarriage? You even tried a couple bottles of pills a couple times, but thankfully you woke up the next day. So going through that, like at that time, your lens was probably kind of hazy because of the drugs and stuff, and the youth maybe too. But how do you look at those kinds of tragedies now with like a different vision? In other words, like what advice would you give for somebody that may be feeling suicidal?
Yeah, so I had a couple times. It was the losing of my friend Scarlett, and then also losing my baby to stillborn, that I didn't think I could go on. And I was just like, what's the point? Yeah, so I tried, took pills, failed, woke up, was totally disappointed. And then at the same time, I was like, okay, well, what's my purpose now? Guess I got to just keep on going. But I would just tell people, like, if you have a spiritual connection. See, I didn't really have a spiritual connection, so therefore I was just feeling lost and depressed, and I couldn't get out of the cloud. But if you have a spiritual connection, then you're never alone, and you're a child of God walking with them. And then also to be surrounded with people who have walked through what you're going through, and they made it out to the other side. Because you always I always felt so alone. Okay. That it couldn't really, share what was going on. And the suicide thing, even with the alcohol thing, like my idea of people that committed suicide was not scholarship athletes. It wasn't people that had two parents and a family.
Yeah.
So it just shook the whole vision of what mental illness was.
Yeah.
And it was during, after her suicide, I went to some support groups and it still didn't match up. You know, she didn't fit all the things that have the characteristic traits. I mean, we had the rage where we raged together and we had that, but she still didn't fit a lot of and so, you know, there was just an acceptance of you don't know what mental illness looks like.
Yeah.
You know, it can be your neighbor, it can be your mom, it can be your dad, it can be the person down the street.
Oh yeah. There's so many celebrities, like people that I looked up to. Well, you know, I mean, I had the Helinskys on here. I mean, that whole story with Helinski's Hope and their son was a D1 college athlete.
Yeah.
He was going to be the starting quarterback at Washington State the next year. And, you know, he killed himself. It's like, that really shook my world. When I first saw that somebody had posted about that, I thought, oh, this is fake news. This is some sort of like rumor or lie and then it came out, it was true. And to this day, I'm still shocked on that one, but there's so many amazing people so many people that I looked up to as a kid, like musicians and comedians, like Chris Farley. And it was the same kind of thing where like, you're like, no, why would he's one of the funniest people in the world. He's got it all. Why would he, you know, I mean, he didn't kill himself, but basically he fell into that same kind of, you know, a lot of did he kill himself? Was it on purpose? But it's like, you know, you're using drugs that are basically going to kill you. It's kind of like a similar path, I think. And this is a cool thing that you talk about in the book too. I don't know if you made up this little saying, but it's kind of cute. You say you can either take Victim Avenue or Victor Boulevard. I kind of like that. So, because I see that as one of the biggest problems in society today. I feel like people have this victim mindset and then thinking that they can't do something or they need someone else's help. And although I do think there's a time and a place to ask for help, like you did, but knowing when and, you know, how and when to ask for that help yourself, like you're asking your friend, you wanted to do something like quit drinking, or whether it's you ask someone else who has achieved some goal that you want to achieve. Like, how do you think this can be applied to all sorts of different things in life? Like, how do people rise up and take control of their own lives instead of being dependent on others? Because even though you asked for help from your friend, I mean, eventually you had to go out there and go to those meetings by yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, within talking to somebody for like 10 minutes, you can tell whether they're a victim of their circumstance or they're a victor of their circumstance. Like almost everybody has childhood trauma. I mean, to all different extents, you know, but whatever. And I just hope I do my best not to pass it down to my daughter, right? But it's like, it's so hard.
No, I think you're doing fine.
It's so hard, but everybody's got their stories. And it's like, is that going to define you, or are you going to overcome it?
Rise above it.
And I really looked at like every person that crossed my path or everything that I've went through made me the person who I am today. You know, so there was no regrets or lost time or I don't know. I mean, I live very carefree and carelessly and recklessly, but at the same time, I kept moving and I kept moving and I kept moving. And just kept going on.
So yeah, just keep trying and don't give up.
Keep trying, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like some people will be stuck on a divorce, or they'll be stuck on their husband dying. And just because I'm around women,
stuck,
so I
okay.
hear those two
Yeah.
things a lot, right? And they just can't get past that. Like it's.
Well, this is a good quote you have from the book. I think this is actually from a movie, but it's in your book. Worrying is like meditating on shit.
Oh, yeah.
That's a quote from the movie. Thank you for sharing. But you had that in I don't know if I saw that movie or I don't remember that quote, but that's a great quote.
Yeah. Worrying is like meditating on shit. It's just a waste of time.
Waste of time. So, and going back to that, you know, needing help, but, you know, helping people to help themselves. That's kind of my whole philosophy on life. You say that people should get a mentor. Everyone should have a mentor. So talk about having a mentor. Like, how do you get one? Is there a program that you recommend, or how should people go about that?
Yeah. So people do it in a couple different ways. I mean, as an athlete, you often will have like your team captain or somebody alumni to be, you know, your leader or somebody that you can ask questions to. It's kind of like a big sister, big brother program. Within the program, there's a way to get one is you just go and you listen and you hear things of people say that you're drawn to, and you're like, oh, I like what they said, or they went through a similar thing, and you just ask them. You know, you say, will you be my sponsor? And some people go about it differently. They call it, you know, their healing coach. My friend just got a healing coach. I go, what's that? And so she told me, I go, oh, okay. So you got a spiritual advisor. That's what I call it, which is actually a sponsor. But it's somebody like that won't judge you no matter what, that you can tell anything to. And I never had anybody that I could totally be honest with, that I could tell every little bad thing that I held shame and guilt about. And she looked at me and goes, okay, is that it? Are you sure? We need to write everything down here on this paper, because you can't heal yourself and you can't make amends unless you get it out. It's one of the steps in the process. And like, she didn't even flinch to anything that I told her. And I was like, oh, she's my people.
There you go. Okay. So yeah, that's another thing where it's like kind of trial and error sometimes with finding the right mentor, because you could have somebody that's not a good fit for you. And so you got to find somebody who's a good fit.
Yeah. Find a good fit. Find somebody who has what you want and ask them how they got it.
And speaking of good fits, so I know there's a lot of diet. I had a fitness expert on a couple weeks ago, and I know there's a lot of diet and fitness tips and things like that. So you're actually a vegan, and you say in your book, you get all your groceries delivered, and then you spend that time, instead of spending the time that you would spend going to get groceries, you spend that time food prepping. Like you cut up veggies and roast them, and then you portion them into glass jars. So like, what's like an average lunch for you then?
Okay, so not vegan, but plant-based.
Isn't that the same thing? What is the difference? You don't eat meat or dairy, or do you?
Vegans might eat Doritos, and they might eat tofu, and they might eat stuff that
Isn't that stuff plant-based? Or processed artificial based?
Right.
But it still comes from plants. It's not meat. There's no meat in those. Or
tofu?
Is there? Tofu? Beans, right?
Oh, I don't know.
But anyway, so you call it, call it plant-based.
I call it plant-based, and it's based around an anti-inflammatory diet, and that all disease starts with inflammation. And inflammation is what causes disease.
Yeah.
So I watched this movie called like Fork Over Knife.
I think I've seen that. I've seen so many of these, but they're so conflicting. I feel like one will say vegan is the way to go, and the other one will say low carb, and you know what I mean? That's what's so confusing. But for you, vegan or plant-based works.
Plant-based. So this one was called Fork Over Knife, and it was by two cardiologists. And they were doing heart surgery on people just to have them come back 3 or 4 years later and need another bypass. And they're like, okay, we need to change what we're telling our patients. And both of them grew up like in the Midwest on farms around cows and dairy and whatnot. And they switched over to plant-based, and they saw a huge, change in the people were able to heal themselves. And my stepdad, who was a great guy, died of lifestyle choice diseases. And it was during that time where, the 40-year-old guy with the big hard belly was funny, or there was like, oh, that belly. And then, at 40, you started taking one pill for high blood pressure, and that blood pressure put off a diabetes pill, and that diabetes pill put off, Coumadin. And the next thing you know, you're taking a buffet of like 12 pills. Well, I watched my stepdad go through that from the time he was 40 up to 64. And food can either be your greatest medicine or the slowest poison. So I slowly watched him by lifestyle choice disease, even though it wasn't drugs, but it was food, because his body never could catch up. And your body's made to heal itself if you give it the chance of. So yeah,
plant-based work for you.
Then here's why I came to plant-based, because my daughter's is almost 10 years old. Her body's starting to change. And I'm like, how am I not going to pass an eating disorder onto my daughter? Right? How do you just say, don't eat that, don't eat that, don't eat that? And I had all this food noise because it was just shifted over from I can't drink, right? So what am I putting in my body? And I just became hyper aware of food. Then I started thinking about food all the time. Like, okay, well, they say that you might gain weight when you stop drinking. You might crave sugar because you're taking sugar out.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't eat that. All right, I got to be careful of this. So when I stopped counting everything and threw that away and just was like, eat all God-made food, the noise went away. It just went away. So yeah. So what do I prep? I mean, I make quinoa, asparagus. I love sweet potatoes, broccoli, just all basic real food. And
so not a lot of carbs though?
Lots of color. Well, I eat lots of fruit.
Fruit, that's good. Yeah, but not a
love
lot of
fruit.
like, do you like pastas and breads?
I like quinoa
Quinoa, okay.
and rice.
Rice.
Quinoa and
That's
rice.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't love
But you
pasta.
don't eat a lot of it, or is it still like kind of maybe not no carb, but is it lower carb than?
I don't even count because, there's protein. Protein comes like in the kale and all the green veggies.
Can you eat tortilla
the
chips with
beans.
guacamole? Because that's yeah, okay.
A little bit.
Okay. You're laughing. Is that like your cheat meal or something? Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay to eat a little bit of chips and a little bit of processed food.
I would just go that. I'd be like, this is plant based. That's how I cheat myself. I don't know.
I'll eat avocado, just like slice it up and eat it right out of the rind with salt and pepper
good.
on it, and as a meal though.
Isn't it funny how like back in the 80s and 90s, it was like this whole low fat, non-fat thing. And that's like, we look back on that because a lot of that stuff was like they'd pump these foods full of sugar and stuff. And so that's like really fascinating to me to think like, nuts and avocados, which are natural high fat food, but that's high fat. That's bad. That's, but it's clearly now we know those are not bad foods.
Diet food makes you fat.
Yeah.
And 0 calorie makes you fat because your body needs to burn. So when you're putting 0 calories in there, then it stores it in the lumps and bumps.
Yeah. Well, speaking of lumps and bumps, you had back surgery. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know you got to probably get going soon here, but I did want to touch on this because that's like part of your book too. And that's kind of the thing. You had this back pain, but you obviously couldn't take pain pills or drink for the pain. So you had to have this back surgery. You said in the book that the back surgery was harder than giving birth. So tell me about that. And what advice do you have for people suffering from back pain? Because based on the statistics on your website, there's a lot of people that have back pain.
Yeah, 80% of Americans will suffer from debilitating back pain at some point in their life. And is it like, does depression cause back pain, or does back pain cause depression? So back pain goes hand in hand with a little mental illness.
Yeah, isn't there a book about heal your back pain or something? It's a mental thing with back pain. You know what I'm talking about? The book? I forget.
Dr. Sarno's.
Yeah.
From Howard Stern.
Yes. I was gonna say that. I didn't know if you were a Stern fan, but I was like, I remember him talking about that, and I was like, what? I had to look this up. It's on my list of books to read. It's like probably down like at the bottom because I don't have back pain, but I'm still fascinated by this idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had back pain, and after becoming sober and stopped numbing, then I realized how much pain I was in. And after it would be a weekend with my family, like going to a Diamondbacks game or Disneyland weekend or just walking around the mall. Then on Monday, Tuesday, I would be in bed again from inflammation in my back. And I'm like, okay, well, this is, starting to take days out of my life. I need to address it. So I started going to yoga. I tried everything. And I go to cold therapy. I would walk into cold therapy bent over, like in so much pain, and I would freeze myself in those cryo things. And then I would be able to walk out standing up. But slowly over the next 6 hours, the inflammation would come back, because it would shrink all the inflammation. It would give me temporary relief. So all this stuff that I tried it all works temporarily.
Yeah. Okay.
But structurally, when you're damaged, you're damaged. And we had bought a new house, and I was moving like 2 weeks with the movers, and then they had all left, and I was still putting the boxes away, and I was just determined to put every little box into its place. And I was lifting up my laundry basket in this new closet and up and over, and pow, it was like shot to the back. I passed out on my closet floor, and I woke up and didn't know how much time had passed. I had like dry tears on my face, and I crawled. I couldn't get up. My legs wouldn't move. I army crawled across a cold tile floor to get to a phone in my master bedroom to call my husband and say, I can't move my legs. And he came home. The next day I went to 3 consultations, and for the first 2 surgeons said, you might never ever be able to run again. My left leg was dragging and was turned out. And then the last doctor, he said, okay, I think I want to do the most surgery on you because you're healthy. He goes, I can't believe your bones aren't holding you up. Your core is holding you up from all the yoga that you had been doing to counter your back pain. So he said, let me make some phone calls. I'll call you tomorrow. So he called, and he goes, I talked to my colleagues, and I've never done this much surgery, but I want to do it if you're up for it. And it's going to be really hard, but I want to fix all of you instead of just one piece of where the pain is. because this will eventually fail and you'll be back on my table in a year and then a year and then a year, which is what happens to a lot of people that have back pain. So 3 days later, I was in surgery. I did 4 hours in the back and I have 2 8-inch scars and rods in my back along my spine, and then sewed me up, turned me to the side, cut me on the side, and did the discectomy, which was a massive herniated disc, sewed me up. I was in the hospital for a week, had to learn to walk again. And it was the most pain ever, yeah.
Oh, wow. This does not sound... And this was all just kind of a genetic thing? Like it wasn't from softball injuries, or maybe softball made it worse? Or...
No. It was definitely from training.
Oh, it was?
Yeah. It was definitely from softball playing. And so alcohol pulls on your calcium, which and creates like an osteoporosis type thing. So I was constantly depleted.
Gotcha.
So, when you're trying to build the muscle, but your bones are deteriorating at the same, you don't have strong bones when you're an alcoholic.
Gotcha. I've heard that. There's a connection there for sure.
There's a connection there. A little connection.
Let's say you talk about that in the book. So let's talk a little bit just about the book, Quitting to Win. We've talked mostly about that throughout this episode, but do you have, it's doing pretty well. It's number 32 in the spinal cord injury books, number 56 in softball, number 650 in 12-step programs, because I'm assuming there's a lot of those books. But it's ranked on all these things on Amazon. It's pretty cool. Do you have any advice for people who want to write their own book? I've heard that from my friend, he said there's like this middle point in the book where you'll get like halfway through it. You'll fly through and then you'll get halfway through the book, and then all of a sudden you hit like a wall, and then you just have to like take a break. Did you experience that at all? Or
No, it
That's
flew
good.
out of me. I had a great team around me, and they kept me going, and got me over my own mental minefields, and didn't let me hack myself. And whatever was stopping me, I was able to talk to somebody right away, because now I'm trained to, like, if something runs through my head longer than 10 minutes, pick up the phone and call somebody.
Okay.
And that's just part of my recipe of keep it moving, because when I get in my head too much, forget it. It's over. No good for anybody.
Yeah. So you have like a team that helps. What kind of team do people need if they want to write a book? Or
Oh yeah, so I have a publisher, and my publisher had a great team. There's the writing team at first, and there's the editing people, then there's the publishing and the marketing. So as you go through these phases, you work through different teams. But I checked in with somebody every day, and from the time I went. So when I made it to my 40th birthday sober, which I never could picture myself over the age of 40, I just didn't have a vision. I just thought I was going to go out like Anna Nicole Smith. I just really thought I would.
Oh God, I'm so
wake
glad
up.
you didn't do that route.
I didn't think I was going to wake up one day.
Oh, yeah, it's bad.
It is sad. And
She had so much money too, didn't she? Have like $500 million or something like that. I don't know if did she ever get the money? I can't remember. It was bad.
I think it went to the daughter.
Oh, okay.
The new guest model now. She's modeling.
Oh,
the
really?
little one. She's so cute. Anyways, I couldn't picture myself at 40. I made it to my 40th birthday sober and celebrated with my family and had a really nice, party. And I decided to write a book at that point. And then it took me about 2 years to start writing. I interviewed a couple publishers. First I had to convince myself that, get through all. I talked to people in my program about how and what to share, and I called up a handful of people I knew that wrote books and asked them, how'd you do it?
Okay. So again, it's that thing of asking somebody else for help and advice on how to do something you want to do. Good advice.
Yeah. So the time I signed with my publisher, he said, I'll take you all the way from concept to conception in a year. And he did.
Awesome.
I started last May, and this May I published.
Wow. Well, that's great. Well, I hope it continues to do well. Definitely, you can get it on Amazon. You can get I think you get the digital version too, right?
Yeah,
Kindle,
you can get the clickable,
or you can get
the Kindle, and I'm the audiobook's in production right now.
It's cool that you actually have like a physical version. I like the physical versions too. I know you sent me the PDF, so I read that one. But typically, when I buy a book, I like having the full actual book. I don't know why. I do the PDFs too, but yeah, it's kind of nice. Cool.
So there's talks about translating into Spanish.
There you go.
So that's happening. And then my course coming out is going to be called Eating to Win. So that's the next thing that's coming out for me. And
didn't you have a back pain course called Back Talk or something like that?
Back Talk.
Yeah. So what is that about?
So that's going to be the same thing. It's just going to be helping coach people through pre and post surgery and if they should get it.
Okay.
And just helping them through that, because people call me all the time and say, you know, what happened. And I've partnered with my spine surgeon, and he did a big campaign around me and my success of the
awesome.
surgery, but mostly attributing to positive attitude and, you know, just keep going. Like,
awesome. Well, the book, the classes, is there a charity or a nonprofit that you want to promote? I always like to end with that.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have one that I'm all the way aligned with, but I do like to support Recovery Rockstars.
Oh, okay. That sounds cool. It's, I'm assuming that's, drug and alcohol.
Yeah.
But is actual Rockstars, or is it just like?
Yep. It's both.
Oh,
Recovery Rockstars. And
I'll have to Google that one. That sounds fun. That's very cool. Yeah, there's a book I just got of autism and Rockstars, where it was like a recipe book that it was to raise money for autism. So it's cool in Rockstars, because I'm into Rockstars, as you could probably tell from my podcast episodes. So very cool. Well, and then you also did you have like an idea? We were going to do something fun for like the video, since besides the awesome conversation that we're having.
I do.
Okay.
Chuck. Okay. So this is just basic sports stuff. We'll see if you know.
Okay.
Okay.
I probably don't. My idea, I didn't have time to do this. I was going to get one of those speed guns, to measure. I want to see, I bet you throw faster than me.
A speed
Because you're a collegiate athlete. And even though you're a girl, I think you'd probably throw faster. You weren't a pitcher, you're first base, right?
First base.
I still think you'd probably throw faster. I think it would have been funny.
That would be fun.
But let's do your idea, because I don't have a speed gun. So.
Okay. So 60 seconds to the question. So baseball, softball.
Yeah.
7 different ways to get on first.
Oh, the 7 different ways to get on, other than, so are we going or?
Yeah,
okay.
Go for it.
So just hitting a single.
So that's a hit.
Okay. A walk. A balk when they hit you, right? Is that what it's called? Getting hit by the pitch? Beaned?
Hit by pitch.
Wait a minute, there's 4 more? An error? Okay.
Yeah.
That would be the same if the catcher misses it, that's still an error. There's 3 more.
Oh, well, that's
is that something different?
That's drop third strike.
Oh, okay.
When the catcher misses it.
If the catcher misses it. So that's 5.
Yeah.
So I'm only 2 more.
2 more.
2 more. No, would a fly out? No, fly out would be out. So no, I'm stumped. Let's see. You can't steal first, can you?
No.
Okay.
Only on a drop third, on a drop third strike.
I guess okay. So that's the same thing. Then I don't know the other 2.
Okay, so it's fielder's choice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that would. Yeah.
And then it could be catcher's or defensive interference.
What is that?
So it's like if you're running and they're fielding the ball, they can't interfere. They have to get the ball around you. So there's in the catcher interference if the bat touches the glove.
Okay.
So they can't reach
That's
up.
not an error, though. That's an interference. Something different?
That's an interference.
All right. Well, I learned something new. That's
so
great.
7 different ways to get on first.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, again, get the book. Check out your classes. Check out your website. Follow you on social media. You're on Instagram, Facebook. I think you're on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Facebook. And are you on Twitter?
Very little.
Yeah. Twitter's scary. It's like a minefield. You just go on there and you're like, oh, this is cool. You'll see some really funny and cool stuff. And then you'll just see some of the most negative, destructive, mean things that you'll ever see in this world. It's kind of scary. But
crystalwaltman.com.
Yes, that's the website. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for coming
Chuck.
on. It was a lot of fun. All right. Okay. So that was Crystal Waltman. The book is called Quitting to Win. It's on Amazon. She's on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Follow her, keep up, share this interview with someone if you think it can help them, or buy them the book as a gift. It's a good idea. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know by writing a review of the podcast. That really helps the algorithm, so more people will see it and hopefully be inspired, educated, or entertained, which is what I'm trying to do here. So otherwise, you can find me on all the social media if you're so inclined. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day or night. And just remember to shoot for the moon, baby.